I'm going to do something wrong here, aren't I? Going to dismiss the kids? Okay, we're supposed to. The reason I asked that, we're going to have a special in a minute. I wanted the kids to hear it. All right, we're going to take a few minutes and welcome each other to church this morning. We're glad you're here. We're going to dismiss the children of their service at this time.
In and out of situations that tug at war at me. All day long I struggle for answers that I need.
Then I come into His presence. All my questions become clear, and for a sacred moment, no doubt can interfere. In the presence of Jehovah, God Almighty, Prince of Peace, troubles vanish, hearts are mended in the presence of the King.
Through His love the Lord provided a place for us to rest, a ways to find the answers in hours of distress.
There is never any reason to give up in despair. Just slip away and breathe His name. He'll surely meet you there in the presence of Jehovah, God Almighty, Prince of Peace. Troubles vanish, hearts are mended in the presence of the King. In the presence of Jehovah, God Almighty, Prince of Peace. Troubles vanish, hearts are mended in the presence of the King. In the presence of the King.
Thank you, ladies. Amen. Nice introduction to Haggai. A group of friends went deer hunting and paired off in twos for the day, and then that night one of the hunters returned alone, staggering in under the weight of a 200-pound deer. The other hunters asked, "Where's Bob?" The lone man said, "Oh, he had a stroke of some kind. He's a couple of miles back up the trail." The other hunters were shocked and asked why he left Bob laying there to carry the deer instead. He said it was tough. It was a tough call. But I figured no one was going to steal Bob. Well, you have to have priorities, right? What are the priorities? Haggai was an old man, 80 years old. I'm beginning to identify. You know, the Bible says in the latter days, young men will see visions and old men will dream dreams. Well, this old man had a vision. He was called, along with the other prophet, the younger man, Zechariah. I gave you the background. It had been a time when, Zerubbabel was appointed governor of Judah, and Cyrus had freed them, and they were back, and then what we call the building of Zerubbabel's temple, which was exciting. But we're told in the Bible when the old men saw it, they cried. And when the young men saw it, they rejoiced, because the old men remembered what Solomon's temple was like, the glory of it. And this was a small little temple. You know, the Bible says, don't despise the day of small things. Now, the glory never came into that temple, although it was a temple, and it represented the dynasty of David that would be the temple in the end times. When Christ, first of all, would come into this Zerubbabel temple renovated by Herod, which was much better looking in Herod's day. And when Jesus was here, it was called the Second Temple. But even the temple was destroyed. That one was in 70 A.D. by the Emperor Titus. Not one stone left upon another. So that temple became a theme, and the theme was God was going to come back one day and establish the dynasty of David. Anyway, I don't want to get on that. I want to look at priorities, some thoughts about priorities. What's a priority? What's the first place things? What do I put first in my life? And we are all living our lives, and we get up and we have priorities for the day. My priority yesterday morning was to get up at 7 and mow the yard. Well, I mowed, and Alice weeded, and then Alice mowed and I weeded, and then we got through by 11 o'clock, the whole yard. Well, is that a priority? Yeah, but it's a secondary priority. We call them secondary priorities, things I want to do, lists of things I want to do during the day. And I read some. I have classes beginning tomorrow, 5 classes, so I better start studying. And so we have, not all in one day, it's just spread out. So we have priorities. What do we put on our lists? And I'm talking about a cover-all thing. What's the top of your mind all the time? That's hard to do. I know we're not hyper-spiritual. Sometimes we're not thinking about the Lord. Sometimes we get a day done and He's not in it at all. And so that's why we have first day of the week worship service, to remind us of priorities, to remind us what they ought to be, and what we ought to think of more than we do a lot of times. Because there's a tendency all of us have, and we can pretend like we're all pious and spiritual, but there's a tendency we all to gravitate to dethrone Christ. That sounds awfully strong. Dethrone Christ as the one who's the Lord of our life. We all have that tendency. Now, this was a priority of time. I want to look at the priorities of time. Time. We have 24 hours a day, 52 weeks out of the year. The Bible says in Ecclesiastes 9:12, man knows not his times as the fishes that are taken in a net, and as the birds that are caught in a snare. And it says, so are the sons of men, that means men and women, snared in an evil time when it falleth suddenly upon them. We don't know how to count our days. We don't know how to, spiritually, we put that behind. Spiritually, we not always, a lot of times we put that on the bottom of the list. Oh, I need to pray today. And we pray at 12 o'clock and when we're tired and when we fall asleep. I need to read the Bible today. Well, I'll read it as I'm in bed. Well, I'll go to sleep. Something, I need to get this in. It's almost like a legalistic thing. I have to fit into my schedule in order for me to remain spiritual. But we do all these other things. That happens so many times, priorities. The Bible says in 1 Chronicles chapter 12, the sons of Issachar understood the times. They knew where they were in their time. Now, it's hard to keep up with our time, isn't it? Our culture changes so much, and it's hard for me to keep up with it, and I'm supposed to, but it's hard for me to do that because it changes so fast. We talked about the telephones and the computers